answering more questions. All right, should I press that button? You think so? Who wants the button pressed? What's that?
Same song again.
Ich bin Schnappi, das kleine Krokodil. Komm aus Ägypten, das liegt direkt an Nil. Zuerst lag ich in einem Ei. Dann schnappte ich mich frei. Schnie, schnapp, schnappi, 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 schnapp. Schnie, schnapp, schnappi, 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 schnapp.
Schnee, schnapp, snappy, 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 snap. All right, so thank you so much again. All right, so here's these questions things again. Okay. I can really taste the hydrogen. It is good. Is it hard water or soft water here? It's softer? It's hard, so you got a lot of lime scaling in the kettles? That's metal. All right, so Travis asks, first of all, thank you, heart, thank you. Any other Kingdom-esque remakes in the pipeline? Would love to hear Sit in the Mountain. I would love to as well. I think the process of making this music also includes the fact that I'm an imperfect perfectionist, which means I'm constantly irritated by my work. Because it's never right, and it never will be. So I like to envision my trip as I'm recording and trying to redo these things as like a donkey with a carrot in front of him, and he's just wandering like, So there's a good chance I'll re-record everything at some point because none of it's right. But as long as the vibe is there, it's at least in the ballpark. And Physicist wasn't really there for me only because I had gotten a new hard disk recorder, and it was like a Roland thing. And halfway through it, I had recorded half of Physicist, and I was really, really happy with it. And I was like, okay, now I need to back it up. I'll press that button. Nuke. I nuked it all. And so I erased it all. So when I finally redid it, I was just like, fuck, you know what I mean? And that reminds me of a story of, I was on tour and we had a big backstage spread with like tons of like meat and cheese and bread and all these sorts of things. And one of the guys in the opening band, we all watched him spend 10 minutes making a sandwich. He put like the grain mustard on and he cut it all nice. And he put like 3 different types of meat and the cheese and everything. And he was, carefully walking back to his seat. And a guitar player came in and was like, oh, and he went, poof, and the sandwich just went, and he was so bummed out that he just like slathered peanut butter on a piece of stale bread and just sat in the corner eating it like a chipmunk. That's kind of how I equate my process with Physicist, the peanut butter and bread thing. So there's a lot of that one that I would like to redo. This is like Anon or Aaron. Is it Aaron? A-N-O-N? Anon? Aaron, of course, A-N-O-N, Aaron. Have you ever done DBT, or you mean like DMT? The duality you keep talking about sounds a lot like the concept of Dianetics. Is that it? Like the Scientology thing? Oh God, I hope not. That'd be brutal. And if it's DBT, no. If it's DMT, no. I mean, I think that I firmly hold to the fact that I know fuck all. And every year that goes by, I know less. And every time some major life event happens that forces me to confront lots of old patterns and issues, I realize that I didn't know anything then either. So anything that I beak off about in a situation like this is purely just mental masturbation. I think the only thing that really means anything in terms of truth is like learning to be quiet. And I think meditation is really great for that. And not necessarily because you're trying to become spiritual or enlightened or anything, but just because it like in that silence is like all the fears start coming up, and then to allow them to sort of have a voice allows you to sort of like reconnect with or evaluate old habits and patterns. And I think a lot of that duality is just kind of part of being a human, right? Like we're all stuck in that whole sort of, we're born a man, born a woman, or wow, God, I'm born myself. All right, so no and no. But thank you. All right, so Alan asks, what was the turning point or riff or artist that made you want to be a musician? That's a good question. I think it was the soundtrack for The Dark Crystal. Because Trevor Jones was the guy who did that, and it had such a profound impact on me when I first saw the movie. I was 8. And now when I watch it, it's like I have to have the dialogue off because it does the thing like, as a man, if you're standing at a urinal and you're peeing and all of a sudden, it's called the piss willies. You're standing there and you just all of a sudden you're like peeing and all of a sudden you're like, right? I kind of feel that way about the dialogue of the movie now. And also I feel that way about a lot of the 70s musicals that had such a profound impact on me as a kid, like West Side Story or Jesus Christ Superstar, Phantom of the Opera. Now when I watch it, it's always... Fiddler on the Roof as well. It's like, we're going to the store, we're going to this, and there's people dancing and everything. I'm just like, But I love the music, and I love the intention that Jim Henson had with that first thing where he used all the capital that was significant to make that movie to essentially make a world for him and his friends. And I really found that incredibly inspiring. And the melodies that went along, the da 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 da, which is in a lot of songs that I've written. I actually used that melody in Skeksis on Strapping. That was like from Dark Crystal. So I think it was that for me. And what was another song I like? Johnny Cash. I love Johnny Cash because, it was like all Johnny and Cash-ish. Wow, I need a day off. Holy cow. Beck asks, with 3 exclamation marks and a smiley face that is listing to the right, which looks suspiciously like it could be ironic, says, have you ever considered dabbling in Broadway theater? Because you would make a great Phantom from Phantom of the Opera. More of a statement than a question, but just saying. I think the thing that I really enjoy about my career at this point is I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. And I'm such a contrarian, I think, when it comes to anybody telling me how I should do anything, unfortunately. My wife always said if she wanted me to do something, she just needed to insist on the opposite. And I figure that if I was in a situation like that where I was privy to somebody else's vision, and I hate acting. I hate acting. It just, again, the piss willy thing, right? So I think that I could maybe pull it off for a song or two, but I don't know if I could do it with the type of intention that would sell it. I think I would always end up just being a cheese ball halfway through it. Like the Phantom of the Opera is there, right? Who's with me? He's here, isn't he? I don't know. I got asked to do a Jesus Christ Superstar thing to play Judas, and I don't want to do that. Really, all I want to do is just kind of like wander around towns and drink tea and go to the beach and have no one look at me. That's really what I want to do. And then when I get home, I want to make sure that the family's okay, and I want to pet the dogs and make sure they're okay, and then I don't want them to look at me either, right? So I think that I love doing what I do, and I love the fact that I've been so fortunate to have such a tolerant audience and people participating in it. So it's allowed me to sort of figure this out. And each record, like I said in the beginning, its function has been much more about trying to get through these emotional hang-ups so I can be, happy is probably the wrong word, but just, kind of at peace with myself. And all the records and all the music and why it was imperfect in the first place, because none of it's important in my mind. It's all like the exhaust of a process. And so there, he strayed once again. Elijah and Jasper asks, what has 100 balls and fucks old ladies? Bingo! I know that one. All right. That's a good joke. I love that joke. But my favorite one that I've heard lately, and if you know it, please don't ruin it because I love doing the punchline. What did the pirate say when he turned 80? Aye, matey. All right, that's my favorite joke. Yeah, it sucks, I know. How do you get 100 Canadians out of how do you get 30 Canadians out of a swimming pool? Time to get out, boys. Okay, hey, we didn't realize we were in there long. We hope we didn't hurt your feelings by being in there, bud. Commonwealth, we are all connected. Ben asked, can you tell us about the gear you're using tonight? Sure. So I have a signature guitar. Yeah. Prestige, I met them in the elevator at NAM, and they're nice people, and they bought me dinner, and they're in Vancouver, and they were kind enough to make a guitar for me. So it's a signature guitar. Oh, God. Huh. Monetizing art, ladies and gentlemen. Awkward.net. So, but then conversely, I'm using this XFX3, which is really cool because it's got 4 sets of stereo outputs, and it can also act as a USB interface. So I'm running Ableton. Oh, I got a bunch of text messages. Uh-oh. That's all right. I'm using Ableton, and I'm using the push, which acts in this case as both a keyboard and a sample launcher, and it's running through a couple different chains. So I've got a chain in there that the USB runs through, and I've got an effects thing that I fade in the samples with this pedal, and that hits an echo chain that goes to a set of outputs that are going to the front of house with Paul there that are just the keyboards. Plus I've got another one that is for the keyboards and the Baby Shark stuff that bypasses that chain entirely, so it doesn't go into the effects loop and it doesn't have the effects pedal. The guitar goes into, basically on the XFX, it gives you a matrix that you can basically make your own virtual pedal board, I guess. So I've got the guitar running into a compressor that's got like a 1176 style light compression on it, just catches the transients, goes into a chorus that's maybe about 8%. And then I've got an alternate chain that goes into an analog delay, about 600 milliseconds with a fair amount of feedback, into a 10-second hall reverb. You asked, I'm going to finish. And then at the end of that, it goes into a ping pong delay with a high and low pass to get rid of the transients. So when I hit a note, it doesn't go ding, 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 ding. It sounds like someone's throwing Smarties at a wall. And the effects go to a separate output to the dry. And I really like gear. I really do. It's fun for me. It's like little puzzles, right? Ben also asks, ever play acoustic live without reverb or delay? Yes, actually tonight is the first time. Hand. Here we go. First time. This is a world exclusive. Let me see. I can't wait to do this. Here we go. So I'm glad it got brought up. So aside from being a jackass, my reason for using all this delay serves a very practical purpose. In a lot of ways, the reason why I wanted to do this acoustic show in limited amounts and in limited places was to reestablish my connection to not only improv, but what it means to sort of actually play music as opposed to replicate it with like backing tracks and samples and all that. And when I write, no matter what it is, whether or not it's Y or the orchestral top or singularity or strapping or anything, the genesis of all this music is me and a guitar. And I always use the echo, and the reason I use the echo is compositionally, it gives me almost like a sketch out of what it is that I will be trying to achieve. And by that I mean, if I hit a note, the sustain allows me to know what the next chord is going to work with. Right? Or right? So as I'm writing, even though lately on the recordings there's a lot less of the echo, I still use it while I'm writing because I could think, okay, this note here, I could say while I'm writing, this is my root, a D, and then whatever this one is, I could think, Okay, so I could have the cellos going. And I could have female voices go. So the echo is as much as it is kind of an effect. I use it all the time because it's how I write. So without it, I mean, sometimes I write without it, but it doesn't work for me in the same way. And what's really funny is sometimes people are, oncoming storm. Sometimes people are very critical of it too with me. They're just like, dude, you should just get rid of the echo. And I'm like, or you could listen to someone that doesn't use echo. I mean, that's a possibility as well. But that is a world exclusive, and clearly I can't do it. So, Alex says, be Prague, my friend, 2017, when the keys failed to start at the beginning of your set and you improvised for 15 minutes was hilarious. It was for me, too. Where does your comedy come from? P.S. My friend Phil, is getting married in 2 weeks. Wish him well. All right, so we'll do these one at a time. All right, so where does the comedy come from? Well, I was thinking that backstage, too. I think it comes from two places. One, I think it comes from insecurity. I think that I cover up the fact that I really enjoy quiet with thinking, well, clearly that's not going to work. Clearly I can't just get on stage and just be quiet because, it's like, even for myself, I get bored. I tried it a couple times on this run. I'm just like, just don't say anything. And then halfway through it, I'm just like, you know what I mean? I like to entertain people. I think I like to make people laugh. But I also think that it is certainly a defense mechanism for me. I tend to go that route because then it prevents me from having to be transparent. And this particular environment of just being up on stage and with an acoustic guitar and what have you, it's a strange thing psychologically because there's nowhere to hide. And every day that you wake up in these environments, and after being at home for several months and being insular or being in the studio or being on my own, some days you wake up and you just don't want to be around people. It's like all of us. It's like some days you're just like, oh my God. But with this, when I get up on stage, like today, I've been in my head the whole day. I had a couple of moments that were really good for me in terms of progress psychologically. But then when I got up on stage, I was like, oh my God, where am I? Oh, right, I'm here. And I know I can kind of default to the comedy because it's like a way I can get a reaction. I know that people sort of enjoy that on some level or another. But sometimes I find it embarrassing because if I'm not completely connected to it, it tends to go to real base humor things really quickly. Like shit and fart and booby jokes, right? It's like, which I do think is funny, but sometimes I'll catch myself in the middle of it and be like, oh my God, buddy, holy shit, you're almost 50, man. You gotta. So there's that. My friend Phil is getting married in 2 weeks. Wish him well. Good luck, Phil. No, I mean, I think marriage is cool. It's like specifically if it's with somebody that you respect and they're your buddy. You know what I mean? I think that's great. It's funny. My mind has said, and then you should say this. And I was like, nope. Okay. Connor asked, hi, Devin. Absolutely love what you do, and you are an inspiration. Apart from your open C and B tunings and standard with casualties, what other tunings do you enjoy to play? Thank you. Well, there's been a couple of moments. Let me think. Planet Rain, Bastard, Kawaii. They were tunings that happened when I dropped my guitar, and I picked up and they were all like fucked up. And I was just like, I'll just start playing it. And then those songs happened, which is convenient until you have to play them live. And then you have to either bring a new guitar out to do that, or you have to like modify it or what have you. What's this? Just drop the guitar and then write a new song every time? All right. Oh, I'm so tempted. But it's the only one I got on tour with me, so I'm going to hold back. But I use open D. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I just like C because it resonates. And I also like it, kids as well, my own and other people's kids and my sister's kids and everything. There's something about it's like even a baby can just be like, And well, not that, it's the E string is out of tune. Well, what is the E string? But I really like the idea that just out of the gate, it's musical. And I like the fact that it's in C. I like the idea like middle C with piano. I like the idea that whoever's back there is actually just like slamming the door, but he's not actually going anywhere. He's just like, looking out. Oh, there you go. Hi. So, that is also indicative of me overthinking it, because now I'm just like, oh, was that mean? Should you have said that? Oh, are you going to feel bad? Don't make me feel bad. I was trying to be funny. You should stop talking. All right. Pam, hi, Devin. I heard you were going to do a big symphony about dicks and vaginas that would cost millions of dollars. Is this really going to be a thing? I'm curious. Thanks. Well, Pam, yes. Okay, but let me clarify, because I just think sex is so strange. Because it's such a unbelievably powerful force. It's so profoundly compelling, and one quotient of ejaculate could populate like a third of the planet. Like, that is immense amounts of energy, right? And the compulsion specifically, like, I think that men and women are intellectually equal, yet we're biologically born into these different, and plus we're assigned these gender roles by society, like immediately. It's like, you get pink, you get blue, and then as you grow, it's like you start recognizing that there are certain biological imperatives that come along with that drive. And with men, I've had to sort of quantify the fact that 90% of my mind is occupied by sex. All the time. Yet, I'm horrified by it. So it's this weird, like, because it's like the human part of it that's just like, it's like, let's take it out. And then all of a sudden, and then specifically after 30 years with your partner, you're like, all these thoughts, you're like, did I do this? But then when it's like, you see them, it's like, you're my friend, I don't want to do that to you. It's fucking gross. You know what I mean? So it's like this weird hang up where it's like, all I think about is sex, yet I'm fundamentally like, not opposed to it, but revolted by it. But I think that in a sense, it's because what it represents is like unity. And because we're so split as a species, and everything is just so this and that, Pepsi and Coke, apples and oranges, that we use it as a metaphor for like unity, for the infinite or whatever. And therefore, all the structures that we have as men or as women become so hardwired to acquisition of sex, and that becomes power, and that becomes finances, and that becomes war, and that becomes... So I want to make this symphony that is like a horrible depiction of humanity being predisposed to sexual interaction as the only connection to anything absolute. And so it's just like men killing each other with their dicks like the whole way, with like this massive vagina that's like on a platform. These men are like, it's like the queen, and they got these boners, and they're like carrying them out. And then on the roof there's like these vaginas, and they're vomiting worms on these dudes. And they're like, the one guy, like, there's this scene, it's this brutal music, like 100-person symphony, and he's like fucks his brother up the ass by accident and kills him. And then he's singing this really heartfelt, like, why does this happen? And then the veins on his penis become the face of his family, and they start screaming in the audience. And it's like, so, but it's going to cost a lot of money because I want it to be projection mapped as opposed to like standard operatic things. And as a side note, I explained this to my wife, and she was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I didn't have an answer. So thanks, Pam. Dylan, how's the vegan diet going for you? Man, my farts are trumpetous and omnipresent. It is like, it's like a horse sighing at all times, It's like every morning, it's like 3 or 4 substantial furry bowel movements. It sounds like I'm releasing a flock of pigeons. It's just like... But I like it because I was vegetarian for years, and then I was like, well, why are you vegetarian? And that was really important for me to figure out. And so I was like, well, if you don't know, if you're doing it because you think that's what spiritual people do or whatever, it's so full of shit. I just hate that fucking shit. It's like, 'cause it seems like this thing, everybody's got this hard-on or fetishizing, like, how do you be more spiritual than somebody else, right? So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna eat a bunch of meat. So I spent a year just like eating everything. Like everything, like, you know, Bengal kebabs and like, you know, silverback donairs and just everything, like the grossest meat I could too. I'd go to the place and just eat something sick. And this is after like 20 years of not eating meat at all. And like my dumps at that point was like Stretch Armstrong. It was just like stuck in me. And I just wanted to see what would happen. And I wanted to see psychologically what would happen. And it was so delicious. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden I started getting horrified by it. And that's what I wanted, actually. I was like, no, eat it until you fucking are horrified by it. So I kept eating it, kept eating it, kept eating it. Then I find like a feather or vein in it or whatever. And then it's like, you know, creme fraiche is just like straight from this sad cow's teat. And I was just like, and I was like, ugh. And so that's why I did it. But like it's so crazy to me that people care what other people do so profoundly, because it's almost like that whole identity politics thing. I don't give a fuck what you eat. I don't care if you smoke. I don't care if you drink. I don't care if you're liberal. I don't care if you're conservative. I don't care. But because I think like the whole process for me, thank you, the whole process for me artistically is finding what my truth is. And it's different than yours. And I think that having a mutual respect for what people do is essential to that. But conversely, I think it's very important as an individual to know unequivocally why you do what you do. Like I remember when we first had kids, I was like, I saw, you know, a baby come out of a vagina. I was like, oh my God, that's what sex is. It's reproduction. That's fuck. And I was like, oh, I'm gay for sure. Clearly I'm gay. But then a lot of it had to do with like there was postpartum depression on her side, and I was just, you know, I'm still like, right? And then, and I went up to all my buddies. I was like, hey, I'm gay. And they're like, you're not gay. And I went up to a bunch of friends who were gay, and I was like, I think I'm gay. And they're like, you're not gay. And I was like, well, why aren't I gay? And he's like, well, when you were a child, did you look at the little girls or did you look at the little boys? I was like, well, little girls. He's like, you're not gay. You're traumatized, and you'll get over it once you start getting laid again, right? And that's what happened. So I thought it out, and I went through it, and then when it went away, I was like, oh, I'm not gay. And then I went back to my buddies like, guys, I'm not gay. And they're like, Jesus, Deb, just keep it to yourself. But my point to that is, I know I'm not gay. You know what I mean? And my friends who are gay, I'm like, of course you're gay. That's fucking awesome. Of course you're gay. But it's great to know, because then there's no fear of it. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same thing with food for me. It's like there's people like my father, like, you know, I went off and on the meat thing, and then, you know, I go over for family dinners. I'm like, I'm not going to have that now. And he's kind of, oh, you think you're too good for meat? And I'm like, fuck no. It's fucking delicious. It's just now I'm just totally rooted out by it. And that's my own trip. Maybe I'll get over it in a year. Who knows? But just do what you do, but do it because it's what you're supposed to do, and really call yourself out on your own shit, and that makes the music fucking wicked. All right, so thanks. Alex, while each of your endeavors represents certain chapters of your life, are there any songs or themes that you would like to revisit? Not particularly. I think I recognize in hindsight what my motivations were, and that's my objective, is more about recognizing that rather than fetishizing it. Because in the past, I felt like my identity was so heavily invested in what I did that in the event that I was no longer able to make music, my value as a person would cease to exist. And I think that had a lot to do with a type of low self-esteem that granted motivated me to do it in the ways that I did in the beginning. But it doesn't make me feel like I want to revisit anything, which, you know, you guys here are clearly people that, for the most part, have been listening to what I do, so you're much more tolerant to what I'm doing tonight than perhaps the average public would. And so it's hard for me to articulate that to them without them just being like, what, dude? Why don't you play Strawberry again? You know what I mean? So I worked through it so I can move on, and then once it's done, it's done. And that's great. Ollie asks, my two favorite people on earth are Stephen Fry and Devin Townsend. Any chance of a photo after the show, please? I promise I won't get an erection. Makes one of us. All right, so I'm going to say this, and I hope you understand, and I hope you take it with the intention that I'm trying to put across. towards the end of DTP, I was really, really shutting down, and I didn't recognize the reason why. And I think this past couple of years has allowed me to sort of reflect on it in a way that answers this question. The same sensitivity that allows me to do what I do in a way that hopefully is of emotional significance to others is the same thing that I have a real hard time not absorbing energy from people. And whether or not that's empathy or narcissism, it doesn't really matter at this point. I'm trying to establish patterns for myself that are rooted in taking care of my needs and understanding where my parameters were, because I appreciate so much, and please believe this, I appreciate so much the ability to do this and the fact that so many of you have supported this for so many years, that if somebody's like, I want this signed, I'm like, I will sign anything. I'll take any picture. But what ends up happening is that I would stay after every gig and I would do that. And it would be so much fucking energy, even though it's good energy. For the most part, like people would say, okay, well, I had an emotion, and it's not just me, any artist will go through this, I'm sure. Someone would say, I had an emotional experience, or somebody in my family died and this song was important to me. My reaction to that is just like, holy shit. And so as an artist, what I want to do is I want to be present enough for them to know that I'm participating in it authentically, yet also protected enough on an emotional and psychological level that I don't take that home with me. It's the same reason I can't watch horror movies. When I was a kid, I used to try and challenge myself to watch, but I can't. When I see things that are super sadistic, it like sticks with me, and it really bothers me. So what I've tried to do with this acoustic tour is I've tried to impose some parameters for myself that are in opposition to what I would like to be able to do, which is to give to everybody everything they want. So what I would suggest tonight, if it's cool, is if there's anything you would like signed, Paul at the front of house has been kind enough to say, if you drop it off with him, I'll sign it. And I promise that the next time I'm in Perth, I will do a full meet and greet. But if you wouldn't mind, for the sake of what I'm trying to achieve for this empath cycle, it's in my best interest to try and learn to establish some boundaries, because I've been terrible with that, and it almost put me in a position where I didn't want to do this anymore. So I apologize, and I promise I'll do it in the future. And thank you. And the fact that you brought up an erection has nothing to do with that decision. Pat, can I have a hug? I'm going to give you a virtual one in light of my last answer, and I will, trust me when I say this is really difficult for me just to not be like, come on up here, Pat, let's get a hug, yeah, right? I've mentioned this before, where they talk to autistic children who, a lot of times autism manifests in children as ways of not being able to understand social cues. And as a result of that, sometimes their lack of awareness of social boundaries becomes such that it has to be taught. And one of the ways that they teach autistic children in some places is that they teach them that they are surrounded by a blueberry, like a big blueberry. And you want to make sure that you don't get into other people's blueberry, right? Or you don't want other people to be in your blueberry. And my blueberry is fucking, one end of it's in Vancouver, and it is getting bigger all the time. And that's being perfectly honest. If I see people and they want a hug, absolutely, I'll give them a hug, absolutely. But even when I come home, my wife, who I've been with for 30 years, and my kid, who I would take a bullet for, they say, Daddy, and they give me a hug, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, buddy? He thinks it's funny because, and I think a lot of it's the job too, because it's like I'm trying to remain present while defending myself, and not defending myself, protecting myself. And we're at a hotel, and he was like, Dad, I want to sleep in the bed with you. And I'm like, oh, dude, I can't stand sleeping in beds with people. It's like, It's super weird, other than conjugal visits, which lights need to be off. Like, I mean, it's like really weird. So, but I love him and I do anything for him. I was like, come on, buddy, yeah. And so he told my wife the next day, he's like, Dad built a wall of pillows between him and I that night. And I saw him in his sleep, he was trying to scale it. You know, he's like coming over in the middle of the night and I keep pushing it up and I'm like, so I will give you a virtual hug, and I as a human being to another human being, I love you. But as a physically just trying to get used to the fact that this spacesuit I'm wearing here is like got a massive blueberry around it, I'll thank you to hug Paul instead, because he's a huggy guy, aren't you, bud? That's a silent. Right. Leif, like safe with an L. Dev, please provide some words of inspiration to continue writing music after 7 years away from it. I'm just going to say one more thing about that last thing. I think it's healthy to learn your boundaries in the same way as learning what works for you in terms of diet, in terms of all the things that you choose and don't choose, things that work for you in terms of media, all these things. And learning to have the wherewithal to say, this is what works for me and this doesn't, is very difficult for me. But I think it's part of this whole empath cycle. So thank you again. Dev, please provide some words of inspiration to continue writing music after 7 years away from it. I think that the goal of an artist, and this is romantic because I'm clearly about to write a cock symphony. Truly, because I am equal opportunity when I come to how disgusting I think both sexes are. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to romanticize women. I used to think of like, all women were like a goddess and they could do no wrong, right? But then I started making friends, like legitimate friends, and they're just like, no, we're fucking gross, man. Like, you need to understand that all this stuff that you think about is like, we think about it too. It's just like, so yes, and vaginas. I would say that the goal of an artist for me would be to run out of things to write about. That would be awesome, because I think that on some level, being an artist is a mental illness. The need to like have it like out there, to have it validated, whatever that is rooted in, is like super strange. And I like to think that eventually I'll just be a gardener and I'll have nothing to write. And people like, you got a new record? I'm like, nope. So maybe that 7 years away from it was all the inspiration that you need. So when you get back into it, it's not the same pressure. Maybe that fact that you spent 7 years away from it, you've learned to control that obsessive need to create. And what will come out of you at that point may be very shocking. And I would say go with it. Maybe it's something that you don't expect at all. But the first things that start coming out, actualize them in their entirety, finish them. Even if you think the idea is shit, because behind those ideas are where the good ideas lie, in my experience, which is why I have so many demos that I can put out as bonus tracks, because I get it out of my system. By getting it out of my system, it doesn't roll around there anymore, and then I can just proceed. So I would suggest the same. Okay, Jack, not really a question, but I made a music video to Think Beyond Things, and I wanted to say thanks for sharing it on your Facebook page. You're welcome. I remember it. It was very cool. Thank you, Jack. Thank you. And there's Jack's fan. Thank you, Jack. Dave, thanks, Dev. Your music has been so amazing and prevalent in my journey since SYL. Lookout 2003. Lookout 2003. Do you feel like your music is part of a special spiritual journey, as your album seems to aptly named Soul Deep? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I'm clever enough. All I do know is that I follow the inclinations where they lead. And they lead me to places that have been really fucked up and really healthy. And there's a certain aspect of like spirituality, I guess, that's with it. But I really resent religion, and I really resent people that think they have answers. And I think that the more I do this, the more I am more satisfied with the silence, because in that is like a certain amount of surrender to the fact that I don't know shit. And through that silence comes a lot of fear, and that's where the music comes from. And so sometimes it's horror, and sometimes it's love, and sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's beautiful. But I think if you allow yourself to be a conduit without identifying too much with what comes up, then ultimately your nature is going to come through. And I believe that my nature and the nature of people in general is more fearful than evil. So somewhere in there is the truth, and I don't fucking know, but I'm having a great time doing it. And I suggest that, Lord of the Fries has a hot dog that I had last night that was a little cold, but it was really good. So you should probably have one of those. Aaron asks, in the Genesis music video, what's the significance of you sitting there with headphones on while just listening? Yes, thanks for making music. Woo! Well, I wanted people to hear it for what it meant to me, which was a passageway through a bunch of random thoughts. And I didn't want the random thoughts to be interpreted as like a schizophrenic statement, rather than allowing these things to come to the surface and not judge them, and have the thread between them be, for the sake of Genesis, for example, 128 beats per minute. That was the thread for that one. And having the video where I was listening to it hopefully implied to people that that's how I think it should be digested, rather than, at a club or in your car or something. So I guess that was my vibe. Wow, these are serious tonight. It's great. Matthew, can I have an autograph? Oh, fuck! Oh, man, if you give it to Paul, I swear I'll sign it. And Paul really loves it. And do you guys understand why I'm doing that? It's not, you do, right? You don't, please don't take it as a sign of disrespect at all, right? Okay, all right. All right, thank you. You too, buddy. It says, Hail Ziltoid. I agree. Chris, my wife may possibly have a baby while you're playing tonight. Does that make me a bad husband? What do you guys think? Really? Oh, Chris. Oh, man. Okay, well, my buddy had the burger, and it had like a cheese sauce on it, and it looked as good, but there's something about burgers that always seems to be the default to like veggie food, It's like, all the vegetarian options, some fucking gnarly burger. And what was really funny as well, those burgers now that are kind of the thing with the brioche buns, they just look so gory. It's like, how would you eat something like this? These big, stiff, stale-looking buns with like a big patty of fucking dude on it and like a bunch of jizz. You know what I mean? I hope that the baby's healthy, and I heard that you circumcised here, so, if it's a boy, you might want to talk to Paul, the hooded gentleman, because he may offer a different perspective on that. And how's that for an evasive answer? Good luck with the baby, man. Woo, no sleep till bedtime. Sam asks, would you ever release covers? For example, Freebird. I've done a bunch of covers. I've done Judas Priest covers, Cops You Cog covers. I did Venga Boys recently. When I first heard We Like to Party by the Venga Boys, it made me cry, and people hate that song, but I feel it's important for me to quantify my emotional reaction to that by saying that I interpreted the fact that they say, the Venga bus is coming, and everybody's running, as an analogy for the apocalypse. And because it was so happy, I just thought that was like the most devastatingly dark thing. It's like, the Venga bus is coming, and every New York to San Francisco. I'm just like, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. So I covered it, and now I have Ziltoid going, yes, and in the background there's just people like screaming, and right? So yes, I do release covers. Okay, Rhett asks, Rhett, is that really? That's awesome. Damn it, Scarlett. Wait, Frankie Scarlett? I don't give a damn. No, that's Rhett Butler. No, is it Brett? Rhett. It was Rhett. I love that name. Good, Rhett. Can you please give a shout out to volunteer fighter fire? Let me try and enunciate it first. All right. Can you please give a shout out to a volunteer firefighter? Huge fan that is missing tonight because he volunteered to deploy to Queensland to fight fires for free. That'd be cool. His name is Will Fogarty. Fuck yeah, Will Fogarty! Fuck yeah! Now that is a real awesome thing. Right on, Will. You're fucking awesome, man. Please be safe. George, does Steve Vai like poop? Nope. He's a good buddy, though. We are good friends, and he was always just perplexed as to why I would do that. But in my defense, at the age of 19, when I worked with him, I could not articulate my discontent when it came to the disillusionment that I felt by being deflowered by the industry in such a profound way. And it had nothing to do with him. It's just I had illusions in my mind about what it was, and that everybody clearly used music as a emotional cathartic release in order to try and find ways towards some sort of sense of self-actualization. But then I got to LA and I was like, oh, it's all full of shit. And I couldn't articulate that at that point, so I took a shit everywhere. Like I shit in his guitar case, I stuck phones up my ass when I was on the Tonight Show, and everybody was like, why? And it's only now that I'm able to say, well, actually. So I think at the time he was really, really, really confused. But we're good friends now, and I think I still confuse him. But, at least now it's like in a much more sort of benign way. Scott B asks, thought on your Project Echo tracks. I wish I could do vocals for those. I still have lyrics for them, but every time I try and do it again, it just doesn't hold the same sort of emotional interest that it once did. But I'll get around to it at some point, maybe. Who knows? I mean, ultimately, like I said in the past, just drink it. Ultimately, like I said in the past, the music serves a function that is really transient. It's not meant to be like this eternal musical statement. It's just the thing that happened, and then I forget about it. Then I go do another thing and I forget about it, and I do another thing and I forget about it. There's certain things that I revisit because I like it, and I think it would be nice to present it in a way that was more in line with what the emotional motivation in the beginning was to be. But it's just a bunch of shit. You know what I mean? It's like all the music is just this shit that happened, and then ultimately it's like if I can get to the point where at the end I'm like, chilled and doing my thing, then whew, mission accomplished. All right. Kendall M. asked, what do you think of the new Dark Crystal show? I've gotten halfway through one episode, and I don't know. I have a hard time with it, but I think it's my own bias because I don't want to sully the thing that the first thing meant to me. Plus, a lot of what was important to me about it, although it looks beautiful, was Jim Henson, because his intention I thought was beautiful. And however, is it good? Yeah, I heard that. And in fact, I felt the same way about the new Blade Runner, but I really liked that, actually. I thought the ending was really cool, and there's a couple of scenes in that I thought were just profoundly beautiful. Like after the first one where he's like, he killed the guy in the maggot hut, but when he's flying over the city, I was like, God, that's really, really tastefully done. So I think that there's a certain aspect of that as well that I could probably adhere to Dark Crystal. Aaron asks, my best mate, Bud. Oh, so those aren't two separate things. I like to think my best mate / Bud, but I think his name is Bud. My best mate, that was rude. You did that on purpose. Why? Because you're trying to diffuse the seriousness. Don't do that. My best mate, Bud, couldn't make DT tonight because it's his anniversary. Just wondering if you could throw him a shout out. It's Bud and Bianca. Hopefully I'll be recording. Are you recording? Are you recording, Aaron? Is Aaron still here? Yay, there she is, yay! All right. Bud and Bianca, married for a long time, working it out. Bud and Bianca, starting with B's, not alliteration, but similar. It's called consonants, isn't it? When two words start with is it consonants? Alliteration. Bud and Bianca, a little alliteration. All right. Thank you. Happy anniversary, folks. I have one more page, and I'm going to play another song, and I'm going to bugger off, and my party night will continue with all that tea and bathing and all that sort of shit. What? All right, here we go. Hello, hi, Paul. We have to shut up now? Do I have to? I'm going to pound through these. Just watch.
Yeah, we got 9 minutes.
Okay, here we go. Tom, will we get any more casualties of cool? Yes. Phil, could you please release the lyrics for Total Collapse from the demo disc? Love you, dude. Don't know what they are. I think if I went through them, I would remember. Oh, I put them up on Twitter at one point. I will try, but I have no idea. Alexander, when performing Strapping on Lad songs again, how does it feel to be doing music from such a different time in your life again? Thanks for being the artist you are. It's inspiring. It's great because at one point I viewed the motivation for strapping as something that was an aberration in my creative identity, but I've realized recently that it was a part of me that was almost post-traumatic, and as opposed to trying to quell a part of me that's clearly a big deal, anger is a human function, that to learn how to articulate accurately at this age is a very healthy thing. I feel like I'm inviting in a part of me that I have pushed aside for a long time, and that sort of self-compassion is in line with empath. My throat's going. Corpse Grinder grinds corpses with APOM says, will you perform a live version of Soul Driven someday? That song is much more production based than it is anything else. I maybe would, but it is of no immediate burning desire to do so. I appreciate that you like it. I appreciate that someone who grinds corpse also likes driving souls. My friends, this has been a fantastic way to end this run. I appreciate being able to come back in the second half and be more in line with what I felt I wanted to be from the beginning. Thank you very much for everything. Thanks for being patient with me in terms of the meet and greets on this run. I promise I'll do another one. I've got one more song for you. Thank you so much. I can't thank you. All right, here you go. Oh, there's my glasses. I can't forget those. I can't. I did it last night. I stopped on them. But I like. All right. Let's go to Singapore, Paul. Ready? All right. Yeah. It's a happy little ditty. It's the summary of the night. Here we go. My life is all that I know, and it's all that keeps me here. My time is all that I own, so I won't let it slip away. My life, birth it down. One syllable, it's hard to make that work. Earth. Here we go. How long can this life go on? Who we are, what we are. How long can this life go on? Who we are. On the other side, wouldn't you rather live it on your own? Even when it bends you over, but life doesn't work like that apparently. When it comes time to go home, we won't let you fade away. No way. Social awkward. How long can this life go on? this venue. You've been incredibly kind, helpful, and it's a really cool place. Thank you for having me. How bad do we need a new reminder? Another text message? Holy shit, who is that? No backups for 962 days. Yeah, that's right. Fuck you, Apple. How long can this life go on? Who we are, what we are. See you on the other side. How long? How long? Who we are, what we are. I'll see you on the other side. See you on the other side. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you, Bert. Good night. You guys take great care of yourselves, all right? Drive safe. And I'll see you in a year, okay? I'll bring back less than a year. And I'll bring back a band, and we'll do this for a few more years, okay? Love you all. Have a great night. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. There's some more here. Distribute them. That'd be great. Thank you. Good night, guys.